14 Palestinian factions, including Fatah and Hamas, have agreed to end years of division and form a unity government. Their landmark deal was signed in Beijing after 3 days of Chinese-brokered talks. China's top diplomats stressed that Palestinian factions must be able to speak with one voice.
最核心的成果就是明确巴解组织是巴勒斯坦人民的唯一合法代表。最突出的亮点就是围绕加沙战后治理，组建临时民族和解政府达成了一致。最强烈的呼吁就是要求根据联合国有关决议，实现巴勒斯坦真正的独立建国。
There is a great significance, not only because we achieved a much better agreement than any agreement before, because it's very practical, very detailed. It speaks about the creation of a unified leadership, practically, but also because it's signed in China, and China has a very important role to play.
Hamas and Fatah are bitter rivals. They fought for control over Gaza in 2007, resulting in Hamas controlling the Strip, while the Palestinian Authority, overseen by Fatah, retained partial administrative control in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. And for more, we're joined by Deborah Wong live from Hong Kong. Deborah, we're seeing that China, this is called the Beijing Declaration. With this declaration, has China managed to establish itself as an effective peacemaker in this particular conflict?
Well, China has made its stance on Palestine clear from the start, calling for an effective international peace conference for a two-state solution. In fact, it was one of the first few nations to recognize the state of Palestine. And China hosted reconciliation talks between Hamas and Fatah back in April. And this time round, we're seeing 14 rival groups gathering in Beijing for the first time, agreeing to end the division and, most significantly, set up an interim national reconciliation government for post-war Gaza. Now, the Chinese Foreign Ministry is calling the agreement an important historic moment because they say that it is the first step to promote a sustainable ceasefire, pave the way for Palestine's entry into the United Nations, and also for it to become an independent state. So the question as to why China, I think, it's twofold. Firstly, we have to look at the economics. Now, China views the Palestinian-Israeli issue as a huge destabilizing force in the region. And it's not great because China has major investments in the Middle East. Now, for instance, it has partnerships with all 22 Arab nations under the Belt and Road Initiative. And China also holds stakes in at least 20 critical port projects in the region. It's, doubled the trade volume with the Middle East from 2017 to 2022. So it does benefit from stability in the region, especially, when we're talking about countering sanctions and tariffs from the West. And, secondly, China also does benefit from positioning itself as a mediator. In fact, analysts call the Beijing Declaration a political win for China because that picture you see of Foreign Minister Wang Yi standing with the 14 faction leaders, that sends a message that China is a responsible power. China, in fact, brokered a peace deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia last year. And we must remember that, this mediation role, it is not new. China has played that role in the Middle East for about 20 years. It is part of several cooperation forums in the region, and it also established a special envoy for Middle East issues back in 2002. And, this entire issue also comes as the U.S. is under scrutiny for its role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And so China stepping up to the table as a responsible peacemaker, I think it is an opportunity for them to prove themselves. Back to you.
And Deborah Wong speaking to us live from Hong Kong. For the Israeli take on this deal, Sarah Coates joins us live from Tel Aviv. Sarah, Israel, of course, would want to be any plans for post-war Gaza. And this deal has been signed without any clear Israeli contribution. How has Tel Aviv reacted?
We're hearing a furious reaction from Israel's Foreign Minister, Israel Katz, really slamming the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. He said that instead of rejecting terrorism, Abbas embraces the murderers and rapists of Hamas. He also struck a fairly defiant tone, posting on X that in reality this won't happen because Hamas's rule will be crushed. and Abbas will be watching Gaza from afar. He finished up saying that Israel's security will remain solely in Israel's hands. Now, this comes amid reports in US media citing two senior Israeli officials that there was a secret meeting held in Abu Dhabi last week. This was attended by Israeli, US, and also officials from the United Arab Emirates, with Abu Dhabi reportedly pledging to send a number of its troops to Gaza as part of this post-war plan really being pushed by the Biden administration to establish sort of an international peacekeeping force in Gaza. But really, the hook here is that Israel must agree to a two-state solution, and this would only happen under the umbrella of the Palestinian Authority.
Israel, of course, Sarah, pardon me, the Palestinian groups, 14 of them in China. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington, where he's due to make a highly anticipated speech to the US Congress. What could he be hoping to achieve while he's on this visit to Washington?
He's certainly really hoping to reassert his leadership, not only in the United States, but of course domestically here at home in Israel. But you mentioned there, it is widely anticipated and it is expected to be boycotted by a fairly large number of Democratic lawmakers. We also need to remember this pressure Netanyahu is under here at home. Many of the families of these hostages still being held in the Gaza Strip, they are calling on Netanyahu not to address Congress before a deal has been inked to release these remaining hostages. And his popularity is certainly slipping. The latest poll released here in Israel shows that 70% or more than 70% of Israelis believe that he should stand down over his handling of the war and also what is perceived to be his inability to release these Israeli hostages. So certainly expected to be a very highly anticipated address, and one that will, of course, be watched very, very closely.
Thanks, Sarah Court, speaking to us live from Tel Aviv.